treatment?
No, I wish that were the case, but sadly it's the opposite. I mean, with the greatest respect to Stephen, I haven't watched such nonsense on British television in a long, long time. Islam doesn't get special treatment. We're not soft on Islam. In fact, the opposite is true. In fact, we're relentlessly negative about and full of stereotype towards Islam and Muslims. You can now say things about Islam and Muslims that you would never say about any other
sort of things?
faith or minority group. Well, let's take one example recently. Last week, the Daily Express on Saturday morning led with the headline, "Muslim plot to kill the Pope." Can you imagine a headline which said Jewish plot to kill the Pope if 4 people had been arrested and we weren't even sure whether they were guilty, whether they were Muslims, etc., etc. In fact, all 6 people were released without charge on the Monday, and the Express put a tiny paragraph on page 9 saying they were released without charge. But they led on Saturday morning with Muslim plot. All of us, all 2 million of us, were planning to kill the Pope, it seems, according to the Daily Express. And look, Mr. Green is someone who, if you go on the Christian Voice website, refers to Islam as a counterfeit religion, a satanic faith, and he says that Muslims can only go to heaven if we become jihadists.
I'm going to
I need to finish this point. I can't imagine the BBC giving, say, Anjem Choudhury 2 minutes to talk about Judaism and rant about how Britain is soft on the Jews, and yet we find ourselves able to even have these discussions.
Well, who knows?
And
Maybe that
you've
might...
never read any history, just as you've never read the Quran. Let's look across the continent. You didn't just talk about Britain in your film. You talked about Christian countries. Let's look across the continent at this aggressive, expanding Islam. We have the rise of the far right as recently as Sweden, where a party in Sweden, which had never done well, did well on an anti-Islamic platform. We have Switzerland, where minarets have been banned. We have France, where burqas have been banned. In Belgium, where they have no government, the parliament spent 4 months debating a ban on the face veil. That's what they saw as their priority. And Belle, you mentioned the terrorism threat. This has nothing to do with terrorism. This is a cultural problem, a paranoia about Muslims in our midst that has nothing to do with security. As I said, what's said publicly already, which is not said about any other group. You look at some of the headlines, people are not afraid to be critical. To respond to Belle's specific point very quickly, people have always been afraid of strangers in their midst, of the other. You go back 100 years and you look at the Evening Standard headlines about the smells which the foreign Jews bring to London. You look at the treatment of the Irish in the 70s, 80s. You look at black immigrants when they came. There's always going to be an other. And today, Muslims make up a very large minority and are seen with fearful eyes and whipped up by people like Stephen who are rather ignorant about us.
But you can continue that debate on our website, and I'm sure you will. bbc.co.uk/Sunday Morning Live.
Specific point very quickly. People have always been afraid of strangers in their midst, of the other. You go back 100 years and you look at the Evening Standard headlines about the smells which the foreign Jews bring to London. You look at the treatment of the Irish in the 70s, 80s. You look at black immigrants when they came. There's always going to be an other. And today, Muslims make up a very large minority and are seen with fearful eyes and whipped